If you are a parent, you are very much familiar with this scenario. Your kid misbehaves. It triggers your anger, and you spank or yell at them, and the kid resorts to wailing. Too much drama, isn't it? This book will help you deal with that kind of difficult moment. It will tackle the essential goals of discipline, the short-term aspect of immediate cooperation, and the long-term goal of learning life skills. Furthermore, it will tackle ways to come up with a firm, no-drama, whole-brain disciplinary philosophy. In Chapter 1, we will discuss what it really means to discipline a child and tackle different no-drama discipline strategies. Chapter 2 will give a detailed discussion on the relationship of a child's developing brain and discipline. Chapter 3 will focus on the essence of showing love and connection to children despite the firm disciplinary approach. In relation to that, Chapter 4 will discuss effective strategies on creating connection with our kids to keep them calmer, so that they may really absorb everything we teach them, thus helping them develop better decision-making skills. After connecting, it is now time to redirect. With this, Chapter 5 will discuss the principle of discipline as a manner of teaching. Lastly, Chapter 6 will discuss different approaches to redirection in order to achieve the dual goal of discipline, encouraging immediate cooperation and teaching kids lifelong internal skills. This book aims to redefine discipline from most people's wrong conclusion that it is a form of punishment or control. There are effective ways to make discipline less of a drama and more of a connection between you and your child. Surprisingly, this book will give you the realization that disciplining moments should not be full of aggression and heartaches. Rather, it can actually be used to build skills that would help your child as they grow into adulthood. Before you read this book, a question. Ask yourself if you are open to learning a different approach to discipline. A kind of approach that encourages immediate cooperation from your child right at that moment and a long-term goal of molding them into individuals who are kind, successful, healthy, and of course well-disciplined. If you answered yes, this is exactly the book that you need. More often than not, it is hard to discipline our kids. They do something unruly, we get frustrated and resort to lecture or spanking. Then they would get upset at us and begin shedding tears. It gets really frustrating when dealing with all the chaos and drama, and we sometimes ask ourselves if there really is a calmer way of disciplining our kids. To define the word discipline, we can look back to its origin. It came from the Latin word disciplina, which means teaching, giving instruction, and learning. Therefore, discipline, contrary to what most parents think, is not about the punishing or controlling. Rather, it is about teaching your child as a student and letting him learn, be it through instruction or through reflecting in his own behavior. There are two goals of an effective discipline. First, to have our child's cooperation right at the moment, and second, to build internal lifelong skills that would help lessen the disciplining acts in the future. If a child misbehaves in a restaurant by consistently running around and disturbing other guests, we would want to make her stop right at that moment. But our second goal must be to make her develop self-control and stick the lesson in her mind so that when she comes back to the restaurant next time, she wouldn't repeat the same unruly behavior. When we discipline our kids, remember that it must revolve around our relationship and emotional connection with them. We want to discipline the child in a way that they would feel our nurturing love and support. In fact, every time our children misbehave is the moment that they badly need to feel our connection. Simply put, firm disciplinary philosophies must work in balanced with empathetic connection. As a result, it will help our children be better people as they grow into adulthood. We'd be able to give them the opportunities to focus more on their brain's responsive rather than reactive state, hence creating more venues of developing internal and lifelong skills. It is common to hear parents complain their frustrations on disciplining their child. There are parents who know in their hearts that spanking and timeouts wouldn't do good, but still can't think of better ways than that, while there are others who get confused between being calm and being too strict. And there are others who still battle daily with their 4-year-old and doesn't seem to win every time their kid resorts to drama and tears. In order to come up with a firm philosophy and principle-driven discipline approach, let us first rethink what discipline is. To break it all to you, discipline is not simply imposing timeouts and battling over dramatic arguments. Rather, discipline is guided by a set of parenting philosophies. Discipline must have a dual goal, the short term and the long term. First, it must encourage good external behavior, and second, it must shape the brain's internal structure for building better behavior, life skills, and relationship skills. This kind of approach on discipline requires parents to have a clear set of parenting responses and firm set of intentions. However, instead of being responsive and intentional, parents often resort to simply being reactive. Imagine your kid playing with her set of dolls while you are busy drowning yourself in take-home office works. Suddenly, your kid throws her doll at you, hitting you in the face. Most parents would be reactive in this situation by letting their anger control them, allowing them to grab the kid in their puny arm, clench their fist so the grip becomes tighter, and with big eyes and clenched teeth, lecture the kid on why throwing something at someone and hitting them is bad. Of course, it is just normal for us to resort in a reactive way during a heated and raging moment of anger. Worse, it is more difficult not to react with anger, especially if we, as parents, are too tired, stressed, or haven't had a good sleep last night. However, instead of being reactive, there's a better way of responding to our kid, something that would help us achieve the short-term goal of reducing such unlikely behavior and the long-term goal of building up life skills. The 3 questions to a no-drama discipline. Let us have a piece-by-piece look at the situation above. Why? Why did my kid react that way? If we would let our anger be peppered with merely assumptions, perhaps our answer to this would simply be because she is just having tantrums. If we would just curiously look into our children's behavior, we would get a better understanding on what drove them to push such an act. It would allow us to see that our child simply intended at doing something, but just didn't know how to handle it right. As a bonus, this would allow us to have a more personal relationship with our kid by acting compassionately. Why did your kid hit you with the doll? You were too busy on your paperwork that you didn't notice she was struggling to put on her doll's clothes. Upon looking closely, that's the only time you would realize that she wanted your attention and help in putting on her doll's clothes. Since she was struggling to do the right thing, her brain was ignited with frustration, thus throwing the doll at you. What do I want to teach my kid right now? The end goal of discipline is to always teach valuable life lessons that would benefit the kid in the long term. You may want her to learn that there are better ways of getting your attention and violence is not acceptable. How? How can I teach this lesson? Reactive parents often resort to timeouts. This may or may not give your kid the lesson about not resorting to violence, but the better way to do it is by connecting with her. You may hug her closer to you to help her calm the anger and frustrations down. This way, she would know that she has your attention now. As she becomes calmer, talk with her and discuss better ways of getting your attention, like approaching you with words instead. Just remember to do this at a moment when you are both in a receptive and not reactive state of mind. When we discipline on reactive mode, we often just see things in our own perspective. We tend to forget to assess what our child really needed at that moment. We tend to forget that we are just children whose brains are not yet fully developed. Example: when a child who's been sitting for about half an hour begins to wail, we tend to assume that giving him something to distract his wails would be the answer, when in fact, what we must do is think of what he needs at the moment. Maybe he needs to get up and stretch his legs. Sometimes it frustrates us because we expect them to tell us directly and exactly what they need, but they simply can't because of their developmental capacity. Therefore, it is important to choose moment-by-moment decisions and not just a one-size-fits-all expectation that we apply to every circumstance. It is important to consider a child's age or development stage, his emotional capacity, the environment, etc. Even the most popular one-size-fits-all disciplinary technique, which is spanking and timeout, can't be reliable. Spanking and timeouts. There are different kinds of parents just as there are different kinds of children. Based on most literature, spanking can only make teaching less effective. It is often associated with negative outcomes even when parents still remain loving and nurturing after spanking their child. Even the non-physical violence such as threatening, humiliating, and screaming at them can wound a child's mind. It is therefore encouraged that parents do not resort to any form of disciplinary technique that creates fear, pain, terror, and aggressiveness. First, these are counterproductive approaches. The technique would only make the goal ineffective because instead of reflecting at his own behavior, the child's attention would only be directed to how mean or terrifying his parent is. Second, they only bring negative neurological and psychological effects. Spanking would only cause disorganized attachment in a child's brain. The basic human instinct is to cling towards the parent for safety and protection. However, it is a human instinct to escape from someone who inflicts pain and terror. If the parent is also the cause of pain and terror, the child's brain would be in a disorganized state, and repeated moments of these can bring long-lasting negative impacts on a child's brain, like the death of brain cells. Third, instead of engaging the child's receptive brains, spanking will only trigger the reactive state that will prevent them from making healthy decisions. There are parents who think that timeouts are better options than spanking. However, timeouts would neither help achieve the dual goals of no-drama discipline. First, instead of allowing the child to reflect on his behavior, timeouts would only give them time to reflect on their parents' behavior, like assuming how mean they are for giving them such disciplinary action. Second, it gives them the psychological feeling of abandonment. When a child wails because she got frustrated over her spilled milk, time out would only aggravate her disappointment. Instead, think of what she needs at the moment. Maybe she needs a reassurance that there is still milk available for her so she won't get hungry again. Discipline is not about letting a child pay for her mistake. Rather, it is about letting her self-regulate her emotional overload. No-drama discipline would build up the skills and connections in the brain that allow the child to make thoughtful decisions and take better control of their emotions. Therefore, as they go along, disciplinary actions would be needed less each time. As parents, you may ask yourself questions that would help in creating a disciplinary philosophy. You may assess what really is your disciplinary technique and how do you and your child feel about it. You may reflect if this technique is effective and how does it affect your relationship with your child. It is important to know that you really want for your kids. You cannot always do it perfectly every time, but if you take effort on developing self-control when your kids behave badly, you can achieve the dual goal of discipline. Through this, you can also lessen the times of overreaction and instead behave with a responsive and intentional sense. A child's brain changes its structure through new experiences, and a responsive and intentional approach is what they need for the health of their developing brains. Not only is the human brain changing, it is also changeable and complex. It allows us to respond to any situation we are in. It can also affect how we, as parents, take control and administer disciplinary decisions. However, remember that our children's state of brain development should also be considered in teaching them discipline. There are 3 important discoveries about the human brain that will be discussed in this chapter, and we will brand them as the 3 C's. The brain is changing, changeable, and complex. The anatomy of a child's brain is comparable to a building that is still under construction with a lower and upper level. The lower level is primitive and controls fundamental functions like sleep cycle, breathing, and digestion, and most importantly, strong human emotions and instinct. The upper level, which controls more complex thinking, only starts to develop during the early stages of infancy and childhood. It is the one responsible for sophisticated thinking, including relationship and emotional skills, regulation of emotions, sound decision-making, and morality. Sounds beautiful, right? These are exactly what we want our children to achieve until they grow older. However, they require a fully functional upper brain that takes a long time to develop. But it doesn't mean that they are of no use during the childhood years. It just means that the basic upper brain structure that was built during the early stages of life will simply be changing during adulthood. Now it is clear to see that no matter how much we try, our kids won't behave like an adult simply because that's how their brains are being constructed. It would even be unfair to our children if we expect them to always handle themselves well and take control over their emotions at all times. One mistake we often do is looking at how our children react based on our own set of adult and fully developed mind, when in fact we need to consider their own point of view and what they are only capable of during their developmental stage. We need to adjust our expectations, especially because a child's capacity to react well depends on specific context, like if she's tired or sleepy or hungry. Example: a sleepy child would likely wail during a supposed nap time as compared to a well-rested one. The wailing is simply an instinctual way of communicating how she feels at that time. When we understand that their brains are changing, it allows us to listen closely to our kids with more empathy and understanding. It allows us to not only react on the external factors, but also see what they are seeing in their own developing minds. The difference between the brain as changing and being changeable is that the former refers to it as something that develops over time, while the latter means it is moldable. It can be intentionally and or unintentionally changed through the experiences we undergo. All of these experiences take place in the brain's neurons and synapses. A Canadian neurophysiologist named Donald Hebb has come up with the term Hebb's axiom, which simply means that the neurons in our brains fire up and form a certain network every time we experience something. When these experiences are repeated over and over again, the network of neurons receives stronger and deeper connections. Example: someone who repeatedly enrolls in cooking classes during his younger years will most likely become a good chef when he grows up. Therefore, if it has already been scientifically proven that experience changes the physical formation of the brain, then, as parents, we need to be extra careful with what we let our children experience. Everything they experience, with all their senses, will have an impact on how they view and interact with their environment and the world. Hence, we may want to review the kind of games they play, the movies they watch, and the conversations that we let them hear. However, as much as we want to, we still won't be able to control some negative experiences that would come along their way, but that doesn't mean that we cannot do something about it. What we can do is help our children walk through these challenging experiences and help them realize important lessons along the way. As we said earlier, the brain has a lower and upper level. The upper brain is receptive and it is responsible for calmer response and controlling the emotions, while the lower brain is reactive and is responsible for anger and impulse. Therefore, when your child throws tantrums at a public place, obviously the lower brain is showing impulse. You can choose to yell and stop him immediately, but that would only enrage him more. What if both of the child and the parent's lower brains are reactive? Then it is going to be a dramatic battle again. The more effective way to handle such situation is to take the brain's complexity into an advantage. Engage the upper brain rather than enrage the lower brain. One trick to do so is acknowledging what she feels. When you both acknowledge what she feels, you are teaching her to calm that enraging feeling. It's a skill that can last a lifetime. Through repeated upper brain engagement, she'll become a better decision maker and reflecting her feelings first rather than reacting immediately. Combining the 3 brain C's and applying them. Sometimes, no matter how much we try to apply the brain C's, things will still not go perfectly. The kids won't still act and handle their emotions well. If that happens, the goal is to still remain empathetic, connected, and calm. Kids won't still be able to act the way they want all the time. However, the no-drama discipline approach assures us of one thing. It builds relationship between parents and kids while it lessens the probability of heartache caused by yelling or spanking or not listening closely to them. No-drama discipline gives the child a feeling of acceptance and safety. If repeated effectively, it gives them the assurance of being loved, in good times and even when they mess up. They would feel that they are not required to be perfect all of the time in order to gain our love, trust, and acceptance. This gives them the freedom that would eventually lead to good decision-making skills. Unlike when a parent controls the child with fear and terror, it diminishes their freedom to move on and decide for themselves. They will just always be afraid of making decisions and mistakes. The no-drama discipline encourages the development of the upper brain by constantly giving the child freedom to understand herself, understand her feelings, explore other options, and make good decisions in every situation. Aside from the benefit of being able to show our kids that they are loved, safe, and protected, the concept of the 3 brain C's leads us to another important conclusion. No drama discipline builds the brain. By teaching our children with the no-drama discipline approach, we are giving them the chance to strengthen the connection between the upper and lower brains. The way we communicate with them has an impact on how their brains develop and what kind of people they will be molded into. What we allow them to exercise in their upper brain will get stronger. Example, when we repeatedly give them the chance to decide rather than simply impose what they do, they develop into better decision makers. As parents, this is exactly what we want to achieve for our children, that they learn to make good choices from whatever situation they encounter and not to simply do what is imposed on them. Setting limits and brain building. The autonomic nervous system has 2 parts: the sympathetic or accelerator, responsible for impulse, and the parasympathetic, which is comparable to a brake, responsible for regulating the impulse. So when a child's accelerator is triggered but stopped immediately with a brake, parental limitations, it creates a response which leads to feeling of shame. It is important that a parent sets limits for his or her child. When encountering limitations, a child brain battles with the concept of good versus bad and/or acceptable versus not acceptable. This process helps build her a sense of conscience and helps regulate future behaviors. One way parents set limitations is by saying an outright no to their child, even if it is unnecessary. However, an outright no, especially if peppered with anger, only disregards the healthy feelings of shame or conscience within a child. This is called toxic shame, and repeated feelings of toxic shame can lead to a sense of defectiveness. This can affect how a child views herself and her relationship with others. The most effective and best alternative to saying no is saying a yes but with condition. This gives the child her needed form without humiliating her. If we look closely, children's misbehavior not only allows us to communicate with them, rather they also communicate with us. When a child punched a friend for playing with his toys, he is communicating his need to build his virtue of sharing. Of course, misbehavior and tantrums are unwanted responses from a child. However, it is important to look at these misbehaviors as opportunities for knowledge and growth. You have the opportunity to reconstruct them and look at them as chances to build the brains. As a result, it creates growth and meaningful experiences for a child. Connecting first is not only more warm and relational, it can be an effective way to achieve the dual goal of discipline, encouraging immediate cooperation and building the brain. Connecting first gives the child a reassurance that you could feel him. In turn, it calms all the emotional chaos. When the chaos turns into calm, the child gets a better opportunity to listen and better understand your teachings. Connection is a powerful tool of disciplining when the child is in an emotional chaos. However, all of these can be avoided. Yes, disciplining acts can be avoided, simply by being a proactive parent rather than reactive. Be proactive rather than reactive. To avoid having to discipline, look for warning signs of possible misbehavior and chaos. Example, when a child shows signs of being hot-tempered and impatient, be proactive and think of possible reasons for flashing those signs. Maybe you'd remember that your child acts that way when she fails to have a good night's sleep. As a proactive parent, what you want to do is act immediately. Like ask her to take a nap first in order to touch up on the warning signs and prevent major misbehavior and disciplining acts later on. A good trick to being proactive is to halt or ask yourself if your child is hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. Proactive parenting requires awareness on your part. If you could just effectively watch out for signs that your child is going to a direction that would require disciplinary actions later on, you'll end up avoiding them. However, there are also moments when warning signs seem unavailable and misbehavior just happens in a snap. The best thing to do in such situation is not react with anger, but to connect first. Connection is a powerful response to our kids' trouble and inability to control themselves. More than that, it offers the benefits which are short-term, long-term, and relational. The first benefit of connection is to move our children from a state of reactivity to receptivity. When our children misbehave, it only means that they are having a hard time controlling and dealing with everything that's going on around them. Their minds are in a state of overwhelming storm, and that's when they actually need us the most. When we begin connecting with them, their receptivity slowly overpowers the reactivity. After that, the receptivity prepares them to effectively absorb what you want him to learn. Hence, it makes teaching more effective. The second and long-term benefit of connection is brain building. When we connect to our children by listening to them, feeling their feelings, and communicating our love for them despite of messing up, it impacts the way their brains develop. Connection and integration in a child-parenting relationship give children a sense of empathy, compassion, and other skills encouraged by the upper brain. In the long term, it develops our children into people with decision-making skills, relationship skills, and successful interaction with their environment. Lastly, connection strengthens the bond and relationship between a parent and a child. When our kid act their ugliest behavior, it is so easy to forget connection and remember our anger. However, in any situation, especially in disciplinary ones, connection must always be a parent's first option. Not only it activates receptivity and builds the brain, more importantly, it communicates how much a parent loves their child. The more empathy, support, and security and unconditional love we show them, the more the relationship would be valued and strengthened. This would give children the essence of unconditional love, that we still love them even if we are not happy with their actions and decisions. Dealing with tantrums. The truth about tantrums is that they shouldn't be ignored because ignoring them is equivalent to ignoring our children's suffering. Tantrums are external signs of internal distress. We know that tantrums are very distressing for the parent too, but dealing with it can be boiled down into asking yourself what kind of message you want to send to your child. The most important message that you would want to send to your child is that you are there with her, even in times of being upset. Of course, you want immediate ending to your child's tantrum. However, if a whole brain approach is moving inside you, your bigger goal isn't stopping the tantrum immediately. Rather, the bigger goal would be to connect and make the child feel your presence. Again, this emotional responsiveness would benefit the child in the long run by helping her brain to develop better choices and control in the future. With all the benefits of connection, including strengthening relationship by consistently listening to a child's feelings when they misbehave, some parents are worried that this might actually lead to spoiling. First off, spoiling is not about giving too much love or too much of yourself to your child. Letting your child know that she can count on you at all times doesn't make her spoiled. Rather, what spoils a child is when you create her a world of self-entitlement where she believes that she could get everything that she wants. Connection only means that we acknowledge our children and their needs, but not giving them a sense that we could give whatever they want. Spoiling occurs when children are given too much material things. It also happens when they get a sense that everyone will give in to their whims. As a result, children grow up not knowing how to work hard for something and develop gratitude, life skills aimed by a no-drama discipline. Connection, on the other hand, is not about giving in to our kids' whims or shielding them from challenging experiences, but it is about just being there for them in times of any form of suffering. To do it effectively, we must know how to incorporate connecting with setting limits, choosing loving limits instead of limitless limits. The former is mainly about commanding and demanding a child to behave in a manner that we want. The latter is about setting limits while still connecting. When we connect while setting limits, we allow our children to have a grasp of valuable lessons of respect and relational ability. Remember, the moment that our children are in their worst is the moment they badly need our presence and connection. In doing so, we have helped them be receptive, build their brains, and strengthen their relationship with us. When our children need our presence during a difficult moment, it is important to exercise response flexibility in order to take the best action needed in that particular moment. Response flexibility is taking a pause first before responding to a scenario. It is basically the opposite of just driving into a one-size-fits-all response to every situation. If we are flexible, we tend to reflect first before taking any action. In this way, we were able to choose the best possible action to handle our kids during a difficult moment. The first principle of a no-drama discipline is to listen to the present and individual moment, not react from the frustrations of the past or the fear of the future. Do not exaggerate the present situation, but be aware of the individual moment you and your child are in. It is not to say that it's just fine to ignore patterns or misbehavior. Of course, denial is also bad parenting style. Example, you convince yourself that it's understandable if your child raised his voice at you because that's what his friends are doing too. Instead of being distracted by external voices, react on the situation based on present, actual facts. Do not rely simply on your own assumptions. Connect to your child in a calmer way to be able to find out what he really needs at the moment. In disciplining your child, take a pause first and feel what kind of internal voice you hear in your head. If it's a reactive voice that echoes subjectivity, anger, expectations, and fears, take a moment first before responding to the situation. If you hear a voice that is receptive, loving, understanding, and connecting, you may now respond to your kid's misbehavior. A flexible response rather than a rigid reaction is a key to no-drama discipline. Another connection principle to a no-drama discipline is asking all the questions, especially the whys, before responding. As a parent, it is important that you disregard all the assumptions and emotions in your head to maintain objectivity. Do not react without even gathering enough data regarding the situation. Example, you yelled at your 9-year-old when you heard your toddler cry while they were both playing in the other room. You let anger echo in your reactive voice when you assumed that it was the 9-year-old's fault simply because he has a record of making the toddler cry in the past. Suddenly, the toddler points to his knees and you guiltily realize that it wasn't the 9-year-old's fault. The toddler fell off the floor at his own movement. Instead of making assumptions, blaming, and criticizing, ask the whys. Curiosity is one good foundation of an effective parenting discipline. Let curiosity overpower the anger and frustrations. Investigate your child's behavior and chase the whys, like, why did she do that? Why did this happen? As you investigate along the way and listen closely to your child, you will be surprised with an interesting, accurate, or maybe hilarious answer from her. However, most children are not yet fully aware of their motivations and insights. They may not be able to answer your whys, therefore it is important that you do not ask the whys but chase the whys. The latter basically means becoming curious in your own mind and asking questions to yourself. This way, you'll be able to look further behind the child's behavior, to see the internal motives and not just the external actions. Another connection principle is to listen closely to how you interact with your child. Unlike the previously mentioned strategies that focus on the child and parental's internal structure, this one is mainly about considering the manner of talking to your child. What you say to your child is important, so as to how you say it. Encouraging cooperation will be more successful and satisfying when you consider your manner of interacting. This is because children cooperate more when they feel that they are connected. So next time, do not say, "Finish your breakfast or else you'll be late for school," with clenched teeth and round, scary eyes. Instead, try to say the exact message with a calmer and softer voice. "Finish your breakfast now. If you won't, we'll have a hard time making it to school on time. You don't want to be late, do you?" Discipline becomes more effective if the how is driven with calmness and connection. The no-drama connection cycle as connection strategies. Connecting with your child means making her feel that you understand her feelings. Connection follows a 4-part process, though the cycle won't always be followed in the same exact order. The first process of the connection cycle is communicating comfort. When your child is in emotional chaos, that happens when she misbehaves, the first thing to do is help her calm down. Comforting words are helpful, but what's really more powerful is nurturing nonverbally. One nonverbal response, and perhaps the most powerful of all, is touching your child. It is so powerful that when someone touches us in a loving way, it releases happy hormones and diminishes the stress hormones in our brains. Sometimes, we do not notice that even our posture, eye level, and hands are nonverbal communication that sends a message to our children. In connecting with your child, allow your body posture to send a message of calmness and not threat. To do so, look at your child below her eye level. You may opt to kneel down or sit on a chair, but just make sure that you are below her eye level. You may cross your arms or put them behind you. No matter which, make sure that your posture is relaxed and calm. Also consider talking in a softer tone. A combination of comforting words and relaxed posture is an effective way of connecting to your child. Nonverbal communication is powerful. It can send a message without you even talking. The second process is validating your child and her feelings. Validation means letting your child know that you understand what she feels and you are attuned to her emotions. Do not impose how she must feel, like saying, "Stop acting that way, you're not supposed to cry for not getting an A on your exam." Telling her what to feel will only invalidate her and make her feel unimportant, invisible, and worse, disconnected. On the other hand, validating her feelings would bring connection between the two of you. It would let your child feel that you are still listening, feeling what she feels, and staying with her even though you didn't like what she did. Remember, identifying the child's feeling is another key to connection. The third process to the connection cycle is listening rather than talking. Most parents think that when their children do something wrong, the best way to discipline them is to lecture them. However, lecture and talking is the least effective response during a child's emotional distress. Remember that a child's brain is still developing and when changing and not yet fully functional. When a child is having a hard time dealing with her emotions, the upper brain, which is responsible for logic and reason, is quiet. Therefore, talking and lecture is useless. No wonder some kids would reply, "Can you please stop talking right now, Mom?" to a parent who is lecturing nonstop. Their brains cannot fully grasp your linguistic approach and would just worsen their distress. The best thing to do then is listen and stop talking. Look for some clues in what she's saying in order to fully understand her. No matter how tempting it is to argue, just listen as your child expresses her feelings. Lastly, as the fourth process in the connection cycle, reflect on what you heard. When you've already communicated comfort, validated her feelings, and listened, it's now time to reflect to her everything that she's told you. It's a process of giving her a perspective of what she felt earlier. This is your chance to redirect her big emotions and convince her that it was just a momentary feeling and not a lifetime state. Example: tell her that you understand why she hated her brother for eating her cake in the fridge, but let her remember how much she loves her brother and the happy bondings they had. In this way, you are giving her a perspective that the hate she felt was just there for a moment and not for a lifetime. Others may say that the connection process is just a way of spoiling a child by giving too much attention. Again, too much attention will not spoil a child. In fact, attention is a vital need of any child anywhere. More so, what the connection cycle really does, it allows us to communicate comfort with our children, to let them know that we are there with them and we see and feel them. This way, it strengthens a kind of connection that reflects love and support, and as a result, it will prepare them for an effective redirection. Redirection is what we do after connecting with our children in which we engage their upper brains. It is necessary to an effective disciplining. For a comprehensive explanation, discipline can be shortened into the phrase 1, 2, 3 discipline. It basically means 1 definition, 2 principles, and 3 desired outcomes. 1 definition. There is a simple one-word definition of discipline: teaching. It is not about giving punishment or consequences or fear and terror, it is about teaching. It is necessary to remember discipline this way so we'll not be off track on our way to achieving its vital goals. When teaching, it is important to let your child exercise her upper brain. Instead of being reactive, allow the sensations, such as guilt, flow naturally in your child. Initiate conversation and allow her to express her feelings. This way, her sense of conscience will be awakened, and this will help in molding her self-control and self-awareness. 2 principles. There are 2 main principles that will guide you in redirecting. First is to wait until your child is ready, and second is to be consistent but not rigid. A sweet spot is necessary to teaching and learning effectively. It refers to that moment when your child has fully transitioned from reactive to receptive state. The nervous system is the center of the child's learning. It should be ready in order to fully grasp whatever is being taught to her. It should neither be under-aroused, like when a child is sleepy, tired, or bored, nor over-aroused when the child is dealing with big emotions. An effective redirection happens when you ask yourself first if your child is ready to listen and ready to learn. Alternatively, ask yourself if you are ready to teach too. Simply put, both of you must be in calm, receptive state before teaching and learning discipline. The second principle is to be consistent but not rigid. Consistency is like a basic rule in parenting. However, there are some parents who go over the top in prioritizing consistency until it becomes rigid and unhealthy. Of course, it is important to set out rules and be consistent at them, but also remember you must be flexible in responding to different situations. 3 outcomes. The first desired outcome of redirection is insight. When you discipline through a no-drama approach, You let your child reflect at her own actions and feelings by initiating conversations with her, instead of jumping into sermons. As a result, she develops her sense of self-understanding and self-control. Alternatively, empathy becomes the second outcome of redirection. After focusing on your child's personal insights, it's important to let her reflect at how her actions have affected others. Through this, she develops her sense of interconnection, which is the basic of moral thinking and actions. After focusing on a child's personal insights and reflecting at others' feelings through empathy, the third outcome of redirection is integration and repair. This is the part where you ask the child what she thinks she can do to repair the situation. Is it saying sorry to her younger sister when she pulled her hair? In doing so, you are helping her activate and develop her upper brain, which triggers responsible decision-making and morality. The brain develops through different opportunities that life has in store for us. In parenting, we encounter different experiences, different opportunities, and different struggles that require different actions. Again, the key is to respond flexibly based on that given moment. The 1-2-3 discipline is not a quick formula that you must memorize all the time or follow inflexibly. However, the 1-2-3 discipline will guide you better in disciplining your kids in a way that leads to better cooperation and better relationship between them and others. More importantly, better connection between the two of you. Redirecting strategies. The specific redirection strategies we want to share with you can easily be remembered through an acronym R.E.D.I.R.E.C.T. These are different strategies that you should keep, and when circumstances require, pick one that is suitable to that particular situation, depending also on the child's temperament, stage, and age, and your own specific parenting style. R. Reduce words. It is important to address the issue at hand, but to do it in a subtle talking. Do not overdo the lecture, as it will only flood your child with more sensory output. When it happens, she is just going to shut down her brain because of her short attention span. Especially younger children or toddlers, their brains do not yet have the capacity to absorb long lectures. Instead, to address a toddler behavior, follow these 4 steps. Connect and address the feelings behind the behavior, address the behavior, give alternatives, move on. By moving on after addressing the behavior, you are giving the child a space and allowing her not to dwell on the negative behavior but instead go back to the right direction. E. Embrace emotions. Embracing emotions means parents must help the child understand her feelings during redirection. It must be explained to the child that what she feels is neither right nor wrong, and neither valid nor invalid. They just are. They are momentary feelings. However, addressing feelings doesn't mean accepting the bad behavior. So you may send her a message like, "It's okay to feel angry at your little sister. You still love her, and your anger is just there for a moment. However, let's think of ways of feeling that anger other than pulling her hair." It's important to embrace your child's emotions because it would make her feel visible and respected. You want her to feel that you still acknowledge her emotions despite of not liking what she did. In doing so, she'll be more open to learning discipline and whatever life skills you teach her. D. Describe, don't preach. When a child misbehaves, the parent's first and immediate action might be to preach and sermon. However, a better approach would be to describe the behavior so she could see exactly what you want her to see. Instead of "stop playing with my makeup kit," describe by saying, "You're playing with my makeup kit again. That might be bad for your skin." Yes, you are teaching her the concept of good versus bad, but remember what a short and clear message would be more powerful than a lengthy sermon. This goes back to the importance of how. Also, describing the behavior gives the child enough opportunity to decide what she would do right at that moment, hence exercising her upper brains. More importantly, describing initiates a conversation. This gives her a chance to explain, thus creating more space of connection between the two of you. I. Involve your child in the discipline process. In disciplining their child, most parents think that it should always be a one-directional lecture approach wherein the parent does all the talking and the child just keeps quiet and listens. Explaining and butting in can even be considered as a bad behavior of talking back. However, the best approach to redirection is a two-directional approach that involves the child in the discipline process. If you involve the child in a collaborative dialogue, she'd feel more respected and open to whatever you are teaching her. Of course, you still have the authority as a parent. A dialogue means the child's input is still being considered in the process, but you still have the final say. When you involve the child in the discipline process, she'll be able to share her ideas on coming up with a resolution to fix the bad behavior. Thus, she'll become a better problem solver. R. Reframe a no into a conditional yes. When a child makes a request, responding with an outright no peppered with a hard tone will only activate her reactive state. Instead of an outright no, redirect the response to a yes with conditions. Do not say, "No, you can't have that ice cream," but say, "You want that ice cream? Okay, you can have it, but you have to have your breakfast first." This way, she'd be able to see that despite the no at the moment, she would still be given a yes before too long. More so, you are helping your child develop her sense of imagining future actions and her sense of possibilities. These are skills that can help her develop social and emotional intelligence. E. Emphasize the positive. A common misconception about discipline that it is nothing but negative, when in fact you shouldn't be focusing on negativities as a response to misbehavior. Looking only at the negative will just focus the process on the bad behavior that you don't want to be repeated. Instead, redirect the negative into positive. Example: do not say, "Stop scattering your toys on the floor," but say, "I would love it if you would begin tidying up your toys now." One trick to maintain consistency is to observe the kid until you catch her doing something positive, then compliment her for doing so. Embracing the positive will emphasize the good things that you want to be repeated. It gives your child a gentle encouragement to repeat them again in the future without even demanding or bribing with praises and rewards. It would make her feel that you notice and appreciate when she is making good decisions. C. Creatively approach the situation. This book has already mentioned that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to discipline. Every situation demands a different response. Thus, it is important that parents remain the response flexibility to be able to think of a creative way to handling a difficult moment. Example: humor is a good tool in bursting your child's bubble of high emotions, especially with toddlers. Parents resort to showing off their comic skills like dancing silly or making funny faces to break the child's emotional distress. Then, change the dynamics of the situation so you can go back to the goal of discipline. This kind of strategy is effective because the brain loves novelty. Showing off humor and novelty can easily get the brain's attention. This can easily diminish the sense of fear and threat in a child's brain, allowing her to open up to her environment and easily connect with others. T. Teach mindsight tools. Mindsight is basically seeing our own minds through personal insights, that of others through empathy, and promoting integration from there. One tool you can use is the hand model approach. It is basically about reminding your child to open up the upstairs brain in order to calm down the overwhelming emotions in the downstairs brain. If repeated effectively, this gives the child the idea that she is the actor and director in that particular situation and she has the capabilities of deciding how the script would end. Example: when your child opens up her upper brains, instead of yelling at her younger sister for messing up her playdate with a friend, she would resort to calmly expressing her feelings of anger and call you to ask her for help in carrying the little sister out of the room. This way, you are helping your child develop skills of understanding others and what's happening around so she can take charge of her response by making intentional choices. It will help your child develop both the sensing and observing circuits. As a result, she will be able to see her environment differently by thinking about options other than what's making her upset at the moment. Mindsight tools give our children the opportunity to act upon their emotions rather than be controlled by them. These mindsight tools, and other strategies discussed here, can be used every time you encounter a disciplining moment with your child. You can try incorporating these different strategies or pick one that best suits the current situation you and your child are experiencing. When you use these no-drama, whole-brain strategies and approach, which can be boiled down into connecting and redirecting, you will be able to easily achieve the dual goals of discipline. The no-drama, whole-brain approach makes discipline a lot loving, relational, and connecting. It is a helpful tool for your child's personal development, brain development, life skills, and relational development. It begins with acknowledging the basic needs of a child: attention, expression, and the need to be understood, supported, and loved. This kind of connection is essential in order to make teaching and discipline more welcomed and absorbed. It does not only help to stop the bad behavior immediately, but it also helps in the development of life skills needed by a child to grow into a responsible, empathetic, and logical individual. Every parent faces difficult situations with their child. You are going to face moments of anger and frustrations. In moments like that, you may want to remember these 4 messages of hope. These will help you find peace and solace during those difficult times. First, sometimes there is no magic wand that would make bad situations disappear in a snap. Sometimes the best and only thing you could do is exert all the love and understanding that you could give to your child. There would be times when you know you've already done your best, but your child still feels bad and upset. That's perfectly okay, and it doesn't mean that you are a bad parent. Second, it's okay to make mistakes as a parent, and it doesn't make you a bad one either. There are times that you've done everything but still end up lowering down your levels and joining your kid's childishness. Don't feel heavy every time you mess up as a parent. Those may not be the best parenting techniques, but as long as you show your kids that you know when and how to apologize for messing up, you are still giving them some lessons. You are giving them an idea that having self-compassion is necessary too, and they must be kind to themselves and to others. As a result, you are giving your child some lessons on love. Third, conflict with our children is going to inevitably happen. Difficult moments would often lead to misunderstandings and arguments. However, you can still take hope by knowing that you still have plenty of chances to reconnect. You may even use these difficult moments to establish a stronger connection with your child by repairing the breach. Your kid will eventually soften, and reconnecting will allow them to see your positive intentions. Fourth, there are still plenty of chances to make a positive change, and it's never too late for it. After reading all the chapters, you may have guiltily realized that you are neglecting your relationship with your child by making rigid disciplinary actions, or that you have missed a lot of past opportunities to build stronger connection. If that's the case, have hope by knowing that it's never too late. Remember that the brain is changing and changeable. If you feel like you've given your child negative impressions and experiences by your reactive responses in the past, then you can still change your impressions. Of course, you're not going to be perfect, but you can decide whether or not to be a parent who is committed to her child's lifelong success, health, and happiness. A note to our child's caregivers. You are important to our children's lives, and we share the same desire to mold them into individuals with good characters. We can work together by giving them effective discipline experiences, as these 8 principles guide us along the way. 1. Giving our children a set of boundaries is essential in helping them become successful in their lives and in their relationship with others. 2. Discipline should never give them a sense of threat, fear, and pain, but a loving experience. The latter allows discipline to become more effective. 3. Discipline's goal is to teach and build our children skills that will help them in becoming good decision makers. 4. It has been scientifically approved that acknowledging a child's emotion can make behavior changing much easier. 5. To build trust and sense of safety, we need to show them that we are with them no matter what. During an emotional distress is when they need us the most. 6. The first step to teaching discipline is making sure the child has calmed down and is ready to listen. It is necessary to wait first until the child is ready. 7. Before we discipline, we need to connect first by soothing their emotional distress. Connecting helps our children become ready to listen. 8. After establishing connection, the child is now more ready to learn, and you may now begin to redirect. What we want to achieve in redirection is enabling the child to gain insight about her and others' feelings and decide how to act upon that particular situation. 20 discipline mistakes even great parents make. As parents, we need to look and assess our own discipline strategy in order to polish our mistakes. Even the most well-informed parents can make mistakes when the no-drama, whole-brain discipline is disregarded. And here are some of those. 1. The main goal of discipline is to teach. However, there are parents who neglect that goal and instead divert discipline as a tool to make consequences or punishment. 2. Another mistake is thinking that being warm and loving and nurturing will only make discipline ineffective, when in fact, it's the other way around. 3. We tend to be rigid instead of consistent. Keep in mind that different approaches are needed in different situations. 4. We think that discipline is a non-alog-based approach, when in fact, talking too much is the least effective discipline approach. 5. We tend to only see the external behavior and fail to investigate the motives or whys behind the behavior. 6. We tend to forget hearing our manner of talking and other nonverbal communications. It is important to remember that the manner of sending a message is as important as the message itself. 7. We tend to tell our kids how they should feel and that big emotions need to be shut off. But in fact, it is very essential to acknowledge how our children really feel. 8. We tend to overreact. It is a mistake to overreact because children become focused on our exaggerated reaction and not on their own behaviors. 9. We tend to forget the need to repair breaches. When this happens, the goal of a loving and nurturing discipline is disregarded. It is important to reconnect as it helps our children develop relational skills. 10. We tend to be emotionally reactive when in fact we must only teach discipline when we are in a calm and receptive state. 11. We let our children soothe their big emotions on their own when in fact they need our help in doing so. 12. We worry too much about our audience. In disciplining, it is important to focus on the child's emotions and your emotions as well. Do not worry too much on what other people might say about your discipline approach. 13. We get confused on how to act when our children fight back. The best thing to do is give your child some break in order to find an effective resolution. 14. We base our actions with our own perspective and emotions when in fact our children's emotions and perspectives should be considered the most in order to respond effectively. 15. We tend to forget that disciplining in public is an embarrassing experience for our children. We may consider taking them to a private place first or just whispering to them. In doing so, we are showing them respect. 16. We tend to make assumptions when in fact we should give our children the chance to explain. Again, we should be flexible in all of our responses. 17. We shrug off our kids' experience. No matter how silly or just of a small deal it is to us, our children's feelings are important and real to them. We need to empathize and listen closely to them. 18. We go overboard with our expectations. We expect that our children can handle themselves well and behave well at all times, but it isn't going to be the case. Remember, their brains are still developing, and no matter how much we like them to behave like adults, they just can't. 19. We let our instincts be overpowered by other people's advice. Remember, our children are ours. Therefore, we must discipline them based on what we feel appropriate rather than how other people instruct us. 20. We tend to forget to be easy on ourselves. When we mess up, it is important to know that we still have plenty of chances to reconnect and make up with them.